यमुनातीरा यमुनातीरा वनचारी यमुनातीरा वन। जय ओम विष्णुपाद परमहंस परिव्रजकाचार्य अष्टोत्तर सदस्य श्रीमद हिज डिवाइन ग्रेस एसी भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी शिला प्रभुपाद की, ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की, समवेत भक्त वृंद की। All glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatharine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayet Nashtaprayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistikhi. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 28, entitled Kapila's Instructions on Devotional Service, Text 39. Yata putracha vittacha prutan martya pratiyate api atmatvena abhimatat dehade purushastata dehade purushastata yata putracha vittacha pritan martya pratiyate api atmatvena abhimatat deha ade purushastata yata putracha vittacha pritan martya pratiyate api atmatvena abhimatat dehade purushastata yata putracha vittacha pritan martya pratiyate api atmatvena abhimatat dehade purushastata. Purushastata. Matajis. Yatha putraksha vittaksha pritan martya pratiyate abhi atmatvena bhimata dehade purushastata. Word to word meaning. Yatha, as. Putrat, from a son. Cha, and. Vittat, from wealth. Cha, also. Pritak, differently. Martya, a mortal man. Pratiyate, is understood. Api, even. Atmatvena, by nature. Abhimatat, for which one has affection. Dehade, from this material body, senses and mind. Purushaha, the liberated soul. Tata, similarly. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. You can take darshan. Take Charnamrit. Translation. Because of great affection for family and wealth, one accepts a son and some money as his own, and due to affection for the material body, one thinks that it is his. But actually, as one can understand that his family and wealth are different from him, the liberated soul can understand that he and his body are not the same. Purport. The status of real knowledge is explained in this verse. There are many children, but we accept some children as our sons and daughters because of our affection for them, although we know very well that these children are different from us. Similarly, because of great affection for money, we accept some amount of wealth in the bank as ours. In the same way, we claim that the body is ours because of affection for it. I say that it is my body. I then extend that possessive concept and say, it is my hand, my leg, and further, it is my bank balance, my son, my daughter. But actually, I know that the son and the money are separate from me. It is the same with the body. I am separate from my body. It is a question of understanding, and the proper understanding is called pratibuddha. By obtaining knowledge in devotional service or Krishna consciousness, one can become a liberated soul. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostude Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarvyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Spiritual wisdom begins by inquiry. The mood of the inquirer draws a particular emotion from the speaker, and accordingly the speaker will disclose the spiritual wisdom. So Mother Devahuti, by putting herself in a humble position and asking Lord Kapila for spiritual guidance, she is drawing this spiritual wisdom, and we are all getting benefited. Just as Arjuna was put under illusion, then as the curtain of illusion was grabbing him, with the last bit of intelligence that he had, he surrendered to the Lord and changed roles from friends to that of a guru and a disciple. And in that mood, he said, "You please instruct me." Then the spiritual wisdom started to flow. In the same way, Mother Devahuti, she is not only inquisitive, but she is also intelligent. So that's why she not only wanted to know the path of bhakti, the process, she also wanted to know the path of jnana, and it's too loud. It's too loud. So she wanted to know the path of jnana and Ashtanga Yoga also. So she raised the questions earlier, and the answers to that become different chapters. So when she asked about the path of liberation, if we consider liberation as the goal, then the process of jnana mixed with jnana being prominent and bhakti is a part of that. So that was one of the chapters, and this chapter is talking about Bhakti Mishra Ashtanga Yoga, where Ashtanga Yoga is prominent and bhakti is a key component so that you can get liberated. So the goal is liberation. The process is Ashtanga Yoga. For meditating, even before meditating, for bringing the mind to a particular focus, the form of the Lord is used as a focus point. Then for meditating, the different limbs of the Lord are being used as the object of meditation, and that's what we saw. Then as the practitioner is putting himself through the process, what happens? Step by step that's being described, the bodily transformations. And then, since the goal is samadhi, liberation, how does such a person behave? What are his characteristics? How does he relate with himself? How does he relate with others? How does he relate with his family members? Very similar to the questions which Arjuna is asking in the second chapter about how is a person who is situated in knowledge? How does he sit? How does he walk? How does he talk? So we can find very similar things that are discussed here. As a liberated soul, how does he act? So prior verses talked about this yogi being situated in his constitutional position, and he has understood that he is part and parcel of the Lord. Now, his mindset and how he is detached from anything material, that was described from verses 34 until 38. So 38 was yesterday's verse, where the body of such a liberated yogi is being described. Now, the senses of such a person's, of a liberated person, the in charge is taken care by the Lord himself, and it functions as long as the destined activities are there for him, then the liberated devotee, how does he deal with his own body? Because he is in samadhi, he is situated in samadhi, which means he understands that he is part and parcel of the Lord, and he has attained the highest perfection. He doesn't consider his body to be his own. He considers his bodily activities like that of a dream. So in yesterday's purport itself, Srila Prabhupada touched upon the person, how the liberated person, how he acts in relationship with his body and how does he act in relationship with others. So yesterday's purport, Prabhupada gives his an interesting analogy, which is the speciality of Srila Prabhupada, where he makes the Vedic wisdom accessible to us with contemporary examples. Even after being switched off, an electric fan moves for some time. That movement is not due to electric current, but is a continuation of the last movement. Similarly, although a liberated soul appears to be acting just like an ordinary man, his actions are to be accepted as a continuation of past activities. Now, yesterday's purport itself, Prabhupada touches upon the liberated soul's relationship with his children and wife, and that's being elaborated in today's verse and purport as well. Similarly, although a liberated soul has the byproducts of the body, children, wife, house, etc., he does not identify himself with those bodily expansions. When describing the properties of the soul in the second chapter, in the set of verses where Lord Krishna speaks about the properties of the soul, and in those purports we can see the difference between the body and the soul clearly being brought out. Body goes through 6 transformations. So each one of you, can you tell one transformation? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have more than 6. Bodily transformation. What's the first transform? What are the 6 bodily transformations? Okay, 1% at a time. Is growth the first thing? What comes first? What comes first? Birth. Okay. Someone else. What is the next transformation? You didn't expect. What? Bhagavatam class? You're asking questions? What? Next chance. Yeah, I know you're all very humble, you don't want to open your mouth, but what is after birth, what happens? After growth, boyhood, okay. So which means you're growing. Good. Boyhood is good. You don't have to hesitate. There is no right or wrong answer. You won't be penalized. So growing. So from boyhood to, you want to take up that approach. Okay, that's the approach Lord Krishna also takes. As an embodied soul, moves from boyhood to youth to old age. So that is transformation in 3. Like 6 phases. What are the 6 transformations? Yeah, so you take birth. Body takes birth, not that the soul. Body takes birth. Then grows, as Mataji said. Then produces byproducts. That is the children. So in that section, Prabhupada will say it's the byproducts are expansions of the body and not of the soul. It's not that the soul expands and becomes his child, his daughter or his son. No. It's a new soul taking birth. Excuse me. Under the supervision of the Lord, karmana daiva netrena jantur dehopapattaye. So, under the purview of the Lord, a particular living entity is put. The living entity takes shelter of the semen and then enters the womb of the mother, and then it starts to grow. So the byproducts are of the body and not of the soul proper. So because the liberated soul knows this, he does not identify himself with those bodily expansions. It's not the children are soul's expansion, they are the bodily expansions. He knows that they are all products of the material dream. So today's purport, Prabhupada begins with this very emphatic statement. The status of real knowledge is explained in this verse. Today's verse is, because of great affection for family and wealth, one accepts a son and some money as his own. And due to affection for the material body, one thinks that it is his. But actually one can understand that his family and wealth are different from him. The liberated soul can understand that he and his body are not the same. So this knowledge of the soul and how it is different from the body, this concept is being explained with two analogies. One analogy is that of how you different from your children. Although there is a lot of affection and there is a lot of loving feelings towards one's children, that's why you put you share the same surname, right? So you'll have your name followed by your surname, that gets inherited from the family. So in that sense, there is oneness, but then you are an individual. You are distinct from your son. From affection point of view, you are as good as you. In that way you show your love and affection towards them, because they have come from your body. But from living point of view, you can't live a life for them, or you can't So this is the simultaneous oneness and difference is there. In the names you'll have the surname to be the same, but then you have your individual name. Because you are from the same family, you are one, but because you are an individual, you are distinct. So you are simultaneously one with and different from your family. So here the distinction is being clearly established. Like you are separate from your body, just as you are separate from your children. So what's the second example that's given in today's purport? So money and bank balance. So if you get a message in your email or in your SMS saying that your bank account is locked. To unlock it, follow these steps, and then there will be a link given. What is it usually called as? What do we call such messages as? Spam messages. Now, but why do people fall into that trap? Why? Yeah, so they feel that they have to, it's my money, I have to protect it, somebody is stealing my money and I have to protect it. Because you're overpowered by that affection, which is an emotion, your intelligence may be switched off, and so you click on that link. Whereas the banks, over and over again, they will tell that we won't send such messages. Such spam messages. If it is from the bank, it will have a certain format. If your account is genuinely hacked, then there will be an authorized message which comes from the bank in authorized format. It will have a header message and a footer and all of that. They will say this is how your message will be. So don't get fooled by the spam messages and don't click on the links. Now the point is, why people fall prey to that is they are so much attached to that money, because they think it is my money. And using this emotional weakness, the hackers take advantage of it, and then they steal that same money which you are so attached to. It's taken away, but you know that it is distinct from you. You lose some money or you gain some money, that doesn't mean that you as a person have transformed spiritually. There's nothing happening from a spiritual point of view when you gain or lose wealth. But because we are attached to the body and possession, that thinking that money is mine, so when money comes, I'm happy, when money is taken away, I'm distressed because of the affection. So that's a key point Prabhupada brings out in this purport about affection. So thinking oneself as a body, and I think I am my body, and therefore the children are also mine. And then when I address the body, I extend it and I say the organs are also mine, my hand, my legs, and all of that. In terms of explaining this example, Srila Prabhupada, when he was asked to address young children, and then he, to make this point clear for children to understand, so he called out for a bright student within the class, and then he asked him to, he pointed to different parts of the body and then tell what's the name of the part of the body. So he pointed to the legs. The kid said, these are my legs, these are my hands, these are my eyes. So as Prabhupada is pointing out different parts of the body, then if it is saying, you are saying it is my hands, my legs, my eyes, my ears, then who are you? You don't say I eyes, I ears, I legs, I hands. What do you say? My eyes, my hands, my legs, then who are you? You are seeing through your eyes, you are smelling through your nose, you are hearing through your ears, you are tasting through your tongue, then who are you? So that is how Srila Prabhupada explained that simple concept that you are separate from the body. And whenever we are asked to point to yourself, the hand naturally goes, it's me, it's mine. The hand goes here. Reason being, that is where we identify the region of the heart, that's where the soul resides. So naturally, so that is where you as a conscious being have taken seat in the body. As His Holiness Radharam Swami says, you are in the body with the mind, but you are not the body, not the mind. So this fundamental distinction is also elaborated by Lord Krishna in the second chapter when he talks about, brings about the distinction, and which our Mathura Mandal Prabhu told, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body, as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age. So here is the first distinction being made. So as excellent book distributors, you will show the picture, right, of, can you identify yourself in this picture? Yes, okay, where are you now? So people will point, if they are young, they'll say I'm here, if they're middle-aged, they'll say I'm here. So then that means you are separate from the body. The other example the Lord gives in the second chapter is that of a, what's the example he gives to that, to illustrate a body is separate from the soul? Any guesses? Yes. Changing of clothes. Can you elaborate on that? Yes, like when a cloth gets dirty. Body wants new cloth, yeah. Similarly, when the body is not suitable for the soul gets a new body. vasamsi jirnani yata vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tata sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi. So, as the distinction is made as a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones. The soul similarly accepts new bodies, giving up the old, useless ones. So, here is also the Lord is bringing out by giving the analogy of a garment. And this also distinguishes between the body and the soul. Now, so many analogies are given, and Prabhupada has personally told in many lectures, and he has demonstrated how to identify or how to separate yourself from the body and the soul. But why is this knowledge not reaching all of them? Why is it that some people are able to get it, some are not able to get it, some only partially get it, or some, even after hearing many times, they don't seem to get it? So that is also explained in the Gita itself, in the which was I was thinking more in terms of text 29, where this is the amazing verse. Right? Anyone knows this amazing verse? Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, and some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So in that verse purport, Srila Prabhupada explains why some are not able to understand spiritual knowledge, even though it is very nicely explained with different examples, and practically also they are able to see, reflect by common sense, how am I addressing, how am I speaking. As we discussed before, I don't say I eyes, I say my eyes, my hands. And when somebody faces the end of their life, what do they say? He or she passed away. Who passed away? What passed away? The body is there. That means the living spark has passed away. So even though such real life scenarios are there, their own speech, common sense, intuitive approach is there, why people don't understand? Srila Prabhupada gives a set of reasons in 2.29 purport. One is the poor fund of knowledge. They are not interested in understanding about spiritual life, spiritual knowledge. They are very busy in sense gratification. That is why when the senses are described, they are always turned outside. Eyes trying to look for something outside, ears trying to hear something outside, nose trying to smell something. In this scenario, the prayer of Prahlad Maharaj came to my mind, where he puts himself in the state of a conditioned soul, and how the conditioned soul struggles being in the body and being dragged by different senses in different direction. Jivvaikatochuta vikarshati ma vitripta shishnoonyatastva gudaram shavanam kutaschid granoonyatascha paladrikvacha karma shaktir bhavyasya patnya ivageha patim lunanti. So every sense is being listed here. The reason we are discussing this verse 7, 9, 40 is to illustrate how senses are pulling us outside in different directions, and we are not able to focus on spiritual wisdom. Jiva, the tongue, then the eyes, all of that is getting listed here. So let's read the translation. So this is Prahlad Maharaj addressing the Lord. O my dear Lord, O infallible one, my position is like that of a person who has many wives, all trying to attract him in their own way. For example, the tongue is attracted to palatable dishes, the genitals to sex with an attractive woman, and the sense of touch to contact with soft things. The belly, although filled, still wants to eat more. An ear, not attempting to hear about you, is generally attracted to cinema songs. The sense of smell is attracted to yet another side. The restless eyes are attracted to scenes of sense gratification, and the active senses are attracted elsewhere. In this way, I am certainly embarrassed. So, here we can see the graphic description of how each sense organ is pulling the soul in different direction, promising enjoyment. And because there is constant pull of the senses of going outside, no one wants to turn inside and hear these topics or internalize these topics, because they are drawn towards sense gratification. So that is one of the major reasons why people don't get it. So one is poor fund of knowledge. Another one is they are engrossed in sense gratification, and they are engrossed in subject matters related to sense gratification. So as Prabhupada illustrates in this translation, so cinema, songs and all of that. And they have a gross material conception of things. What does that mean is Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, he was illustrating an example of how when this theme of soul is discussed in a country, and then when he said, when the speaker said, "You're not the body," then one of the person in the audience says, "Then whose body I am in?" So the thinking is so much engrossed that they can't think beyond the body. If I'm not my body, whose body am I in? So when they're told you're not the body, you're spirit soul, so because of too much of being engrossed in material subjects and being too much engrossed in sense gratification, they can't take in spiritual wisdom. And the other reason Prabhupada gives is they are not austere. One is not austere, he can't understand spiritual wisdom. Even the matter of fact, to come and attend a spiritual discourse where you have comfortable chairs, you have nice hall where there is facilities for air, water, nice place to sit here, even then not many turn up. Even they can't take that much of austerity also to come and hear spiritual topics, because they want something else. So the personal application point of view for us is, if we want to deepen our spiritual understanding, some amount of austerity is required, and that one has to take. And Prabhupada explains, if one is able to understand the position of the soul, the position of the Lord, which means he has done austerity in the previous life or is doing austerity in this life, or a combination of both. So that is why a person is able to understand spiritual topics, especially the topic of the soul. Next theme I wanted to discuss is about the levels of confidentiality. The first level of confidentiality discussed in the Bhagavad Gita is the theme of soul, which is discussed in the second chapter. As we know, there is confidential knowledge, there is more confidential knowledge, and there is most confidential knowledge in the Bhagavad Gita. So the confidential knowledge is this knowledge of the soul, how the soul is distinct from the body, then the different properties of the soul. The soul is eternal, imperishable, immutable. What else? Unborn, eternal, primeval. All that. Second chapter, you have the list of characteristics of the soul. That constitutes the confidential knowledge. In that section itself, Prabhupada will introduce the more confidential knowledge, which is the analogy of the soul and the super soul like two birds sitting on the same tree next to each other. One bird is eating the fruits, the other is not, is just watching. So the more confidential knowledge is that of relationship between the soul and the super soul, and what the soul does for spiritual activities. So for bodily activities, we have all the activities related to the body. So what does the soul do spiritually? That is the more confidential knowledge. And how does the soul relate to Paramatma? Knowledge of Paramatma, that even in this section is going to come up on the next verse onwards. So from Gita point of view, knowledge of the soul is confidential. Knowledge of the soul, super soul, what the soul and the super soul, how do they relate, the activities and functions of the super soul, that is more confidential. Then take a guess, what will be the most confidential? Yeah. How as he as Swayam Bhagavan Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and how even though he is the Supreme Person, he can still be brought under control through what? Yeah, bhakti. So that is why the knowledge of Bhagavan and the knowledge of bhakti and complete surrender to him, and how he interacts with his devotees, and how he allows himself to be controlled by his devotees, and how he reciprocates with his devotees, all of that constitutes the most confidential knowledge. So that's why in the 9th chapter we will see glimpses of this, where Krishna reveals how he can be conquered. If you offer me with love and devotion a leaf, a fruit, a flower or water, I will accept it. And how does he deal with his devotees? Now I will take care of removing the ignorance in their heart. And even if my devotee commits the most abominable action, he is to be considered saintly. Why? Because he is situated, Api said, Suduracharo, but he is bhajate mam ananyabhak. So sadhu reva, so such a person is still considered sadhu, because I dwelling in his heart will take away the ignorance with the shining lamp of knowledge, which means the responsibility of delivering the devotee, the Lord takes that. So that constitutes the that is the most confidential knowledge in terms of the gradations within the Bhagavad Gita, where you have confidential, more confidential, and the most confidential. And in this Yoga of Supreme Person, in the 15th chapter, the Lord puts it in a set of verses where he talks about the living beings, the two sets of living beings, Kshara, Akshara, Evacha. Kshara, Sarvani, Bhutani, Kutasto, Akshara, Uchate. So these two sets of living beings he will describe. Then he will talk about the knowledge of Paramatma. Then the knowledge of Paramatma, what he does, that he will describe in other chapters also. So what does Paramatma do? He Upadrishta Anumanta. And then from him comes knowledge, remembrance, forgetfulness. So that is more confidential. Over and above, I am the Supreme Person, the source of both Brahman and Paramatma and the living beings, both conditioned and liberated, and that constitutes that is the most confidential knowledge. So if you look at chapter 15, from verse 16 onwards, Lord will describe this. Two kinds of living beings, the Jivatmas, fallible, infallible, Kshara, Akshara, Evacha, Kshara, Sarvani, Bhutani. So besides these two, who is maintaining these two, there is the greatest personality, the Supreme Soul. And then he says, I am transcendental to both, fallible and infallible. I am the greatest. I am celebrated in the Vedas as that Supreme Person, and whoever knows me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, without doubting, is a knower of everything. Then this confidential, he therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me. So the knowledge of the soul, super soul, then the knowledge of Bhagavan and the devotion. So we have gradations of confidential, more confidential, and the most confidential part within the Bhagavad Gita. So when we understand that we are not the body, we are spirit soul, how do we practically apply to see results? His Grace Radheshyam Prabhu in his books, he has given several set of practical applications of soul. Is that when you understand that you are so tiny, you will naturally become humble. Right? You're 1/10,000th of the tip of the hair. So you're so small that you can't be broken any further. And that is why the soul is unbreakable. Why? Because it is so small. So we are so small, we can't be broken any further, and that is how we exist eternally. Right? Because you're unbroken, you can't be broken. So you exist, and therefore you exist eternally in that position. So when we know our actual position, naturally we'll become humble. The second point he mentions is that of how when we know that we are innately spiritual, then we should cultivate spiritual qualities, like the list of qualities Krishna mentions in the Gita, the items of knowledge and the divine qualities. So Prabhu explains that one has to consciously cultivate those qualities, because that is what you are. These are the qualities you have to cultivate. It gives clarity. If you are spirit soul, this is what you need to. If you are body, then you start going to gym, build the body, or go to yoga. So if you think you are the body, you want to acquire all the things related to the body. But if you know that you are soul, you are in the body, but you are not the body, so you acquire spiritual qualities. You tend to go towards that compassion, humility, tolerance, all of that. So then Prabhu also explains how we start to view the world spiritually. Who does the resources belong to? Who are other living entities? They are also other living entities. So affection towards family members, Prabhupada writes, it's quite natural. And when dealing with family members, we see them also as spiritual beings, and they are part and parcel of the Lord, just as I am part and parcel of the Lord. So my duty is to make them Krishna conscious. I need to give them spiritual input or spiritual food, we can say. So body requires food. So similarly the soul requires spiritual wisdom and seva and all of that, swadhyaya. So all of that, as a member of the family, you start to give to them, and thereby you are fulfilling your responsibility, because you are considering them as spiritual beings. So they also require spiritual nourishment. Yeah, that's the word I was looking for. Spiritual nourishment. So your responsibility is to give them that, along with protecting their body and taking care of their mental and bodily needs. You give this also. So this is real compassion. As Prabhupada says, compassion for the dress of a drowning man, that's not real compassion. You save the actual person also. So that is why, as if you don't become a father or mother or a friend or a demigod if you can't save your dependents. So this spiritual wisdom helps us to get focused on that. What am I supposed to give my dependents? Along with taking care of their material and mental and other needs, I need to take care of their spiritual needs as well. I have to deliver them. So this begins by understanding we are not the body, we are soul, and they are not the body, they are also spirit soul. And just as I require spiritual nourishment, they also need spiritual nourishment. So that is why 13th chapter, detachment from family section, Prabhupada will talk about family coming together in the morning, chanting Hare Krishna, reading Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, and then you go and do your occupational duties, come back. Again in the evening you have the same discussion, deity worship. So he will give all of this and he will tell that if you do this, so then you can make your home happy. One need only chant Hare Krishna, accept the remnants of food offered to Krishna, have some discussions on books about Bhagavad Gita, engage oneself in deity worship. These 4 things will make one happy. One should train the members of his family in this way. So if one can mold his family life in this way, one doesn't even have to enter the renounced order. So the affection to family members, that concept is discussed. So how do you show real affection to them? So this is how you show. But if the family life is not congenial, family life should be abandoned. So Prabhupada kind of balances both. So thus we saw the distinction between body and the soul by the current example of you are distinct from your family members, you are distinct from your bank balance. Children and bank balance give you kind of emotional support and financial support, but still you are distinct from them. We saw examples from the Gita about changing of the bodies as a dress. After having established ourselves in the spiritual platform, how do we take care of others also? I think that kind of leads to the next set of verses. So I'll conclude here and see if there are any questions on what we discussed today. If there are no questions, we'll conclude here. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. You have a question? Prabhupada ki jai.
but we don't. We wish we can, but we can only see. So they are 2 in number, but the function is 1. Ears are also 2 in number, function is 1. Nostrils 2 in number, function is 1. But he says as far as the mouth, tongue is concerned, it's actually 1, but the function is 2. So he says this is very important. Elsewhere also you will see in Bhagavatam where it's given Jitam Sarvam Jite Rase, one who has controlled each one of the other senses, they are considered to be, okay, mastered that particular sense. And in that context it's also given in the Shastras how, if you take, let's say, a fish. For fish, which sense does a fish use most or more prominently?